Emily Harris was the girl everyone admired, brilliant, kind, and full of promise. Daniel Cross was the man no one noticed, quiet, polite, and hiding a terrifying secret. What started as a secret relationship soon spiraled into a chilling obsession, leading to one of the most disturbing cases the town had ever seen. Behind closed doors, a predator watched, waited, and struck, leaving behind a trail of silence, fear, and ultimately, death. Emily Harris had always been the kind of person others gravitated toward. She radiated warmth, kindness, and intelligence in equal measure. From her early school days to her final year at university, she had a way of leaving a lasting impression. Teachers described her as gifted, friends called her loyal, and neighbors admired her independence. Her life, as far as anyone could tell, was full of promise. She was studying psychology at a prestigious university with hopes of becoming a child counselor, motivated by a deep desire to help others overcome trauma. Emily volunteered regularly at a local shelter, tutored younger students, and maintained a near-perfect academic record. Her days were scheduled, her goals clear. It seemed as if nothing could go wrong. On social media, Emily's life was a gallery of joy, smiling selfies at coffee shops, weekend trips with her friends, cozy snapshots with her cat Luna, and inspirational quotes she liked to share. Her Instagram profile showed the world a woman who was healthy, focused, and seemingly content. Her stories painted a picture of someone who had found balance in every area of life. But what no one realized was how carefully curated this image was. Beneath the surface, Emily had begun to unravel, slowly, quietly. In her final semester, subtle cracks began to show. She missed a few classes, which was unusual for her. She seemed tired, distracted, and jumpy, even in casual conversation. Her professors noticed the change, but attributed it to stress from finals. Her close friends asked if she was okay, and she always brushed it off, blaming it on long nights studying or the pressure of upcoming internships. No one pushed her too hard. Emily wasn't the type to lose control. Whatever was going on, they believed she would handle it. What they didn't see were the moments when she stared too long out of windows, the times she locked her doors twice, or how often she looked over her shoulder while walking home. What they didn't hear were the knocks at odd hours, the phone calls with no one on the line, or the quiet moments when she would cry in the shower, unsure of what was happening or why she felt unsafe in her own home. Emily began withdrawing from social events. Her phone, once always buzzing with texts, went quiet. She no longer visited the shelter. She no longer posted regularly. Her smile, once so effortless, started to fade. Then came the day she disappeared. It was a Thursday. She had been seen at the university library, quietly returning books and checking out a new stack on trauma psychology. She waved to a campus guard on her way out and walked toward the parking lot. The weather was cold but clear. She was wearing her favorite coat, gray wool with black buttons, and carrying a tan backpack. That was the last confirmed sighting of Emily Harris. When she didn't show up for a presentation the next day, her professor sent her an email. It went unanswered. Her friends tried calling. The calls rang out, then went straight to voicemail. Something wasn't right. Within 48 hours, she was reported missing. A girl admired by so many had vanished without a trace. The search for Emily Harris began with urgency and hope. Friends, classmates, and even strangers rallied to distribute flyers and share her photo online. Her disappearance had sent shockwaves through the campus and surrounding community. It didn't make sense. Emily wasn't the kind of person who just disappeared. She had responsibilities, dreams, people who loved her. There was no logical reason for her to vanish. The police launched an official investigation, starting with her apartment, which appeared undisturbed. Her bed was made, her cat had food and water, and there were no signs of forced entry. Her keys, wallet, and backpack were missing, but her phone and laptop were left behind in her car, which was found parked near her building. The doors were unlocked. Nothing appeared stolen. That detail unsettled everyone. There were no immediate clues, no signs of struggle, no security footage showing someone following her home. It was as if she had stepped off the face of the earth. The investigation broadened, pulling in phone records, bank activity, and interview after interview. Everyone who had known or interacted with Emily was questioned. Friends described her as recently withdrawn, but never suggested anything serious enough to warrant concern. Her professors noted a decline in her performance, but had assumed it was due to stress. Neighbors reported seeing her enter her apartment that evening, but no one recalled seeing her leave. The days passed with no answers. Hope slowly turned into frustration. Her parents arrived in town, desperate and overwhelmed, pleading for information on television. Her case gained local media attention, and soon people from across the state were sharing her story online. Despite hundreds of tips, none led anywhere useful. Theories emerged. Some believed she had been kidnapped. Others speculated she had suffered a mental breakdown and left voluntarily. The idea of her staging her own disappearance was suggested and quickly dismissed by those who knew her best. It was on the 14th day after her disappearance that a call came in from a storage facility 2 towns away. A unit, rented under a false name, had started emitting a foul odor. The facility manager, thinking it might be spoiled food or a dead animal, opened the unit to investigate. What he found was far worse than anything he had expected. Inside the unit was a mattress, stained with something dark and old. Torn clothing, some matching the description of what Emily had worn the day she vanished, lay scattered. The walls were bare, and the space had clearly been used, cleaned, organized, and then abruptly abandoned. Police were called immediately. Forensics teams sealed off the scene and began to examine every inch of the small room. Hidden beneath the mattress, officers discovered a notebook. It was Emily's journal. Inside were several handwritten entries, messy, frantic, some with crossed-out lines. In the final pages, she wrote about fear. Not just any fear, but the sense that someone was watching her, following her, waiting. She mentioned a presence she couldn't name but felt constantly. A person who made her feel unsafe even in her own home. She called this person the Quiet One. This was the first real lead. Emily hadn't simply disappeared. Something had happened. And whoever the Quiet One was, they were the key to uncovering the truth. The discovery of the storage unit shifted the investigation into darker, more disturbing territory. What had once been a missing persons case now pointed to something more sinister. The contents of the unit suggested a prolonged psychological torment rather than a spontaneous act of violence. Investigators combed through every inch of the space. The mattress bore bloodstains, some old, some fresher. DNA tests would later confirm traces of Emily's blood. Pieces of duct tape were found on the floor, along with zip ties and a set of gloves. It was a makeshift holding space, hidden behind a metal door. Just a number among rows of other units, perfectly ordinary on the outside, but a nightmare inside. The most critical piece of evidence remained Emily's journal. Her words painted a chilling picture of a life lived in growing fear. The early entries were vague, mentioning a feeling of unease, a sense that she was being watched. Over time, the writing became more detailed. She described hearing noises at night that she couldn't explain, waking up to find things moved slightly in her apartment, and the sensation of being followed. She mentioned that she once found a photo of herself slipped under her door when she had never taken. It showed her sitting at her desk, working on her laptop, with the angle suggesting it had been captured from outside her window. The name, The Quiet One, appeared repeatedly, always in the context of fear and confusion. She wrote that she didn't know who he was, but she believed he was someone she had met before. He didn't speak. He didn't confront her directly. He simply existed around her unseen, but always felt. One entry noted that she started covering her windows at night, sleeping with a light on, and placing a chair under the doorknob. Another spoke of her finding her back door unlocked one morning, despite double-checking it the night before. Still, she never contacted police, perhaps fearing she wouldn't be believed. Her words revealed someone slipping into a world where trust and safety were no longer real. Investigators began re-examining security footage around her apartment and the university. Most of the footage had already been reviewed, but now with a specific figure in mind, they looked again. This time, they spotted something. On multiple occasions, a man in a hoodie was captured standing across the street from her apartment, always in the shadows, always watching. He never approached, never entered the building, but he was there, more than once, just out of sight. His face was never clear, and he didn't match anyone who had been formally questioned so far. This discovery added to the growing realization that Emily's disappearance had been premeditated. Whoever had done this had watched her closely, had known her routines, and had taken the time to isolate her. The storage unit wasn't spontaneous, it was prepared. Someone had planned to remove her from the world in complete silence. Now, with DNA evidence, security footage, and her own words, the search narrowed. Emily had left behind a trail of fear that now led investigators toward a chilling conclusion. Someone had been playing a long, quiet game, and he wasn't done yet. As the investigation deepened, the focus turned to the people closest to Emily. Investigators revisited every name she had mentioned, every text she had sent, and every interaction in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Among the names was one that hadn't stood out before: Daniel Cross. He was a teaching assistant in one of her upper-level psychology courses. Quiet, polite, and intelligent, Daniel was well liked by faculty and respected by students. He had a reputation for being helpful and professional, rarely speaking about his personal life. When asked about Emily, Daniel admitted they had been close, but insisted the relationship had ended amicably months earlier. There was nothing, he claimed, that would connect him to her disappearance. On the surface, his story appeared solid. He had an alibi for the night Emily vanished and no prior criminal record, but something about him didn't sit right with the lead detective. A deeper background check revealed that Daniel had transferred universities twice during his academic career. The reasons were vague: conflicts with supervisors, personal issues, and disciplinary warnings that never led to formal charges. Investigators found this strange but not incriminating. However, when they searched his apartment, the fog of innocence began to crack. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in Daniel's bedroom was a box containing a disturbing collection. Inside were photos of Emily, clearly taken without her knowledge, some from behind bushes, others through windows, and one directly outside her apartment door. There were also small personal items: a used coffee sleeve with her name on it, an old student ID she had reported lost, and a necklace she wore often, but was never found after she disappeared. Perhaps most chilling was a printed copy of a map, marked with her daily walking routes, times she typically left home, and locations she frequented. This discovery changed everything. Daniel was brought in for further questioning. He remained calm, denying any involvement, and claimed he had kept the items as a way to remember someone who meant something to him. But investigators now believe they were dealing with more than a broken-hearted student. The methodical nature of the materials found suggested obsession, surveillance, and planning. Despite the circumstantial evidence, there wasn't enough to make an arrest. DNA found in the storage unit hadn't yet been conclusively matched to Daniel. Still, investigators began building a psychological profile. They believed Daniel had slowly isolated Emily, using subtle methods to destabilize her sense of reality. He had inserted himself into her world just enough to remain close, but not enough to draw attention. When she tried to pull away, he didn't confront her. He observed, waited, and planned. Pressure mounted as media attention intensified. The public wanted answers, and Emily's family was growing increasingly desperate. Yet, without a body or a direct link tying Daniel to the storage unit, the case hovered in limbo. The authorities needed one final piece to force the truth into the light. And then, just when the investigation seemed to stall, a voice from Daniel's past stepped forward, bringing with it a revelation that would shatter the calm exterior he had carefully built. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Grace Larson, a woman who had attended a different university 5 years prior, contacted the police after seeing a news segment about Emily's case. She claimed to recognize Daniel Cross, not from news coverage alone, but from personal experience. Grace had filed a restraining order against Daniel during their time as students, citing stalking, harassment, and emotional manipulation. Her case had never moved forward due to lack of hard evidence and the fact that Daniel left the university shortly afterward. But the patterns she described were alarmingly similar to Emily's ordeal: anonymous gifts, surveillance, threatening, silence, and the slow erosion of her sense of safety. Grace's testimony prompted investigators to revisit Daniel's academic and disciplinary records more aggressively. They unearthed complaints filed by 2 other women, both describing him as unsettling, overly invested, and impossible to get away from once he fixated. While none of these complaints had resulted in formal charges, they collectively painted a pattern of obsessive behavior stretching back years. With this new information, law enforcement sought a search warrant for Daniel's digital devices and storage accounts. What they uncovered next would confirm their worst suspicions. On an encrypted hard drive recovered from Daniel's closet, forensic analysts found video files, carefully labeled and organized. Several of them were of Emily. One showed her walking home, another depicted her studying through her apartment window. The most disturbing video showed her inside the storage unit, dazed, tied, and frightened. The footage confirmed that she had been alive for several days after disappearing. In the background, Daniel's voice could occasionally be heard, calm, controlled, and chillingly matter-of-fact. This was the final piece investigators needed. Armed with overwhelming evidence, they arrested Daniel at his new place of employment under an alias in a nearby city. He had already begun the process of building a new identity, suggesting he believed he had successfully erased his past. In interrogation, he initially denied everything, but when faced with the video evidence and Grace's testimony, he broke. To avoid the death penalty, Daniel agreed to a plea deal. He confessed to abducting Emily, holding her in the storage unit, and eventually killing her when he believed she might escape or expose him. Weeks later, acting on information he provided, authorities located Emily's remains buried in a shallow grave near an abandoned farmhouse once owned by his deceased uncle. The recovery brought an agonizing end to months of uncertainty for her family, but it also confirmed the cruel and calculated nature of Daniel's actions. He had built a life around appearing normal while feeding a quiet, dangerous obsession. His ability to hide in plain sight among friends, students, and colleagues shocked everyone who thought they knew him. Emily's story, once filled with hope and ambition, had been rewritten by a predator who thrived on control and silence. Yet in the end, her words, her courage to write down her fear, helped expose the truth. Her journal, once hidden, became the light that uncovered the darkness behind closed doors.